We knew that the running back landscape would change this offseason, but after one day of free agency, everything has changed. There are a lot of big-name running backs on new teams, and they are not at all what we expected. We're going to break down each move and tell you how it matters for fantasy. It's hard to know where to start, but probably the biggest name that is now in a new zip code, Saquon Barkley, rumored to go to the Eagles. That's exactly where he landed, the same division. I'd say it's a little bit different scenario with this Eagles offense as opposed to the Giants. So, Chris, is this actually the best place for him for fantasy?
I don't know if it's the best place, but this is a good place. I mean, I know there's going to be people that are going to say, like, oh, he's not going to score as many touchdowns because of Jalen Hurts. And there's people that are going to be worried about the offensive line because Jason Kelce retired. And those are legitimate concerns. But he just played with the New York Giants, who had no offense at all. Like, this is still a significant upgrade for Saquon Barkley from where he was at last year. He's still good in the passing game. He's still a good player. And now he's going to be in an offense where teams can't just stack the box knowing that Saquon Barkley is the only threat they have on offense. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts, lots of threats here. We just saw DeAndre Swift have the best year of his career in this offense. I don't know if we're going to see the best year of Saquon Barkley's career because, he's a bit older and he's already had some great years. But I think we're going to see a great year from Saquon Barkley. I feel just fine about him going into fantasy this year.
Yeah, you're exactly right. People are going to immediately say, wow, Jalen Hurts is going to hurt him and, the touchdowns aren't going to be there. When have the touchdowns been there for Barkley? That's the only thing that's really held him back from stardom on a yearly basis. Last year, only 6 touchdowns. Over 6 seasons, he's only had double-digit touchdowns twice. Some injuries, of course, played a part in that, but still, he looked just fine last year, behind a ragtag offensive line, if we can call it that. I don't care if Kelce's gone. They're going to replace him with somebody else. It'll be a major upgrade for him. Will he get as many touches on a regular basis? I'm not sure. It really depends. But at the same time, he's probably going to be on the field more just because the Eagles actually run more offensive plays. So I think that there's a trade-off in that sense. Barkley's going to be totally fine. Second-round pick for me. I think this is actually a good spot for him. Now, along with Barkley last offseason, Josh Jacobs was holding out, looking for a deal, didn't get it, and so hitting free agency, he wound up in a spot that I will just say I had no idea was coming. He's a Green Bay Packer now. Did you think that this was going to happen, and what's your reaction?
No, I definitely did not see this coming. My first reaction was, okay, this is going to be interesting, and then they went out and released Aaron Jones shortly after, and now my reaction is, Josh Jacobs is going to smash in 2024, and he's easily been the best value on draft boards. I mean, I'm getting this guy in like the 6th, 7th round of fantasy drafts. I don't understand why. He's going to be the guy in Green Bay now. This offense with Jordan Love last year answered all the questions we had about could this be a good offense without Aaron Rodgers, put all that to bed. We know Josh Jacobs is still a good player. He's still relatively young. He's a good pass catcher. Josh Jacobs in that Aaron Jones role in this offense, yeah, I'm all over Josh Jacobs this year.
When it comes to Jacobs, I always feel a little bit guilty because I feel like I'm always off of him. Look, I doubted him big time before his breakout season. A lot of people didn't see that coming. And then after his huge monster season, I doubted him again because I thought, all those touches, he's going to wear down, he's not going to be as effective, and he wasn't. Last year, he only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. Now I'm going to doubt him again because the same thing. This is a guy who's not the youngest at running back. He's got some wear and tear in his body. He's looking a little bit more, dare I say, like a plotter these days. But also, even though this is maybe a better offense in Green Bay, I don't know that it's a better situation. He's going to catch passes, sure. He's going to get goal line work, sure. And I don't count A.J. Dillon as legit competition. But I just don't know how run-heavy this offense will be. Jordan Love took a major step forward at the end of last year. They've got a lot of talented young receivers. I think he's fine. I think he'll be comparable to last year. But I don't see him making major gains just because of this move. Now, you're still wondering who's going to be the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. It's not Tony Pollard. He is gone, and he's taking Derrick Henry's place in Tennessee. Another shocker because we didn't think Tennessee was in the market for a running back, but here we go. Pollard and Spears, timeshare, or is Pollard the guy?
I think Pollard will probably be the 1A here. I mean, they're paying him a decent chunk of money, but I think we're going to see pretty close to a split. And what's really confusing to me about this is one thing about Tyjae Spears last year, he was so good as a receiver, so good out in space. And they went and got another running back who also excels as a receiver out in space, right? Tony Pollard did not excel as a between the tackles runner last year. Now, maybe the ankle had something to do with that, but this seems very strange to me. Two guys that are kind of similar in terms of like what they excel in. So I don't love this for Tony Pollard, even though I do like the Titans offense this year. I think Brian Callahan, I think we're going to see a totally different offense than what we're used to. I still feel like we're going to see a decent amount of Tyjae Spears. So this signing to me has killed not only Tony Pollard's ceiling, but also Tyjae Spears' ceiling.
It's just so weird because, like you said, two very similar type of guys, and like we knew Tennessee would have to do something at running back, right? Spears, even if he was the starter, he was going to need somebody quality to back him up. I thought maybe sign a veteran for a discount, maybe draft a player later, but not pay, I guess, what is decent amount of money for a guy like Pollard. Didn't see this coming. I hate it because I was all over Tyjae Spears in some of my preseason sleeper videos. I thought that he was due for a monster season. I'm not throwing that completely out the window. I feel, if anything, maybe now he'll actually be affordable in drafts because his draft stock was going a little too high for my taste. It's going to be hard to really gauge how to value Pollard or Spears right now. They're both going to have like low-end RB2 value, but that's probably it. I'll tell you, though, this makes me a little more confident in the passing offense of Tennessee because they're going to have two legit threats coming out of the backfield along with their receivers. And it wasn't too long ago, Austin Ekeler was the top running back in all of fantasy. How far he fell in just 1 year. So where did he fall to? Looks like the Washington Commanders got themselves another running back. Not a place that he was linked to at all, at least not that I know of. Chris, first of all, is this a surprising move, and does it make sense?
I say, yeah, a bit surprising, but it does make sense. Antonio Gibson no longer with the team. They need that change of pace, pass-catching type of running back. I know Brian Robinson was pretty good in the passing game last year, but that's not really his strong suit. Plus, Austin Ekeler, for as bad as he was last year, was still very good in pass protection. He's still good in that role. And I'm sure the Commanders value that. And they got him pretty cheaply here, so maybe they're hoping they can still get something out of him. But as far as fantasy goes, does this really make me significantly higher on Austin Ekeler? Not really. I still worry that he's going to have a very limited role and that he doesn't really have much juice left. So I think it's good for the Commanders, probably good for Ekeler, but I'm still not sold on him in fantasy.
Maybe this is me still being a little too high and wishful thinking about Brian Robinson being the lead back. I honestly see this as Ekeler just becoming a third down back and filling the Antonio Gibson role. Now, he will be more involved than Gibson, and I still think even at this stage of his career, he's still better than Antonio Gibson. But I think that's why they got him, because it's going to be pretty much a 1A, 1B type of thing. I still think Robinson out-carries Ekeler. That's right. I think he's going to get more rush attempts than Ekeler this season. Of course, Ekeler will be the one dominating the receptions out of the backfield, be there on third down for pass protection and all those things. I'm not even sure if I can make anything of this until we know who Washington has at quarterback, this offense in general, because that matters for a guy like Ekeler. So at this stage, I don't know if any other landing spot for him would have been much better, but I think Ekeler is nothing more than a backup in fantasy. The surprises continue. Did you know the Bears were in the market for a running back? Well, how about DeAndre Swift landing in Chicago? Still don't know who the quarterback's going to be for the Bears, but Swift looks like the guy there. Does this sink Rashawn Johnson's value for you?
I mean, it has to, but this is such a weird situation because they still had Khalil Herbert for one more year. Obviously, they drafted Rashawn Johnson last year, and they paid DeAndre Swift the same amount of money as Tony Pollard, like 3 years, $24 million. That's not, backup type of money for a running back. Saquon Barkley got 3 years, $37 million, so it's not like he got significantly more than these guys. I don't know how this is going to play out. If I felt confident that DeAndre Swift was the guy, like the Bears are like, we brought him here to be the guy, I would love DeAndre Swift in fantasy. This is a great situation for a running back. Whether it's Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, it doesn't matter. This is a great situation for a running back. I just wish I knew for sure it was DeAndre Swift. This is one we're going to have to really pay attention to in training camp, in preseason, see how he is used. But this is certainly the opportunity will be there for DeAndre Swift. It's just going to come down to, I guess, is he the guy? Does he just completely pull away from these other guys? Or are we stuck in some three-headed running back type of committee?
Well, it seems odd that, of all the areas the Bears could address, like wide receiver maybe, that they would choose to spend up on a running back. But then when you realize the Bears have some of the biggest cap availability of all teams in the NFL, I guess it's not too ridiculous because they still got money to spend. To me, and this is not the topic we're going to get into right now, but this is just another sign that they're going Caleb Williams and trading Fields. But that aside, I think this Bears offense will be better next year. New offensive coordinator. It's, remember, different philosophy, right? We're not seeing Luke Getsy at OC anymore. And so we're going to see maybe a step towards using more of a workhorse approach. Not that Swift has ever really been a workhorse, but he'll get probably a little bit more run than he did in Philadelphia. Then again, it's definitely not as good of an offensive line or just offense in general. So all in all, I'd say probably similar production from Swift. I think he's still got some legs in fantasy. And then a move that we really weren't even expecting to talk about, Zack Moss. Yeah, he signed with the Cincinnati Bengals. So what? So what is that they released Joe Mixon right as this happened. And so Moss, I guess, is now the RB1 for the Bengals. So that means we need to talk about Zack Moss. Is this a guy who can come close to replicating Joe Mixon type numbers?
Maybe. We saw him do it in Indy last year. He was great for stretches when Jonathan Taylor was out. I do worry, though, a little bit for Zack Moss. Number one, outside of that stretch last year and some mediocre stretches back in Buffalo, he's never really been an efficient workhorse type running back. Also, I think this is good-ish for Chase Brown, probably, because, it gives him a better chance to compete for that job, or at least for a role in this backfield. I don't know if Chase Brown can really ever be a workhorse running back either, but he's not going to have a good chance to compete for this role. So I think we do have to consider Zack Moss. I don't think Zack Moss was really being drafted anywhere, and now potentially being the lead back for the Bengals, we definitely have to have some interest in Zack Moss now.
Some interest, yeah, but I'll tell you, this does make Chase Brown more interesting to me. I think Moss might get the first crack at being the lead guy, but let's face it, Brown is faster. He seems to be the more talented running back, and I'm going to lean towards the talent. It's just a curious move. Not so much that they got rid of Mixon. I think that was maybe overdue, but just interesting that that's who they chose to replace him with, is Zack Moss. And so to me, it looks like they're going to go with some sort of a committee here. I don't think they're done at running back. I think they're going to add somebody else later in the draft, or maybe even another cheap free agent. It'll be curious to see with a new offensive coordinator, don't forget, what this backfield even looks like. And still more signings. Devin Singletary, a starting running back still in the NFL. It looks like it because he's taken Saquon Barkley's place. The Giants just inked him. Does this mean that he's the RB1 there, and should we be interested?
I think it definitely means he's the RB1. Should we be interested? I don't know. I mean, Devin Singletary, I know he had a nice year last year, but I think a big part of that was the fact that CJ Stroud was so good, teams weren't worried about the run. It's the Giants. It sounds like it's going to be Daniel Jones again. I mean, it almost has to be Daniel Jones again because they're paying him so much money. Is this really good for Devin Singletary in fantasy? I mean, he might get the volume, but what's the upside here? I just kind of like bench depth to me for fantasy purposes.
You said it all. I mean, basically, it comes down to it's the Giants. Look, unless they happen to get somebody like Saquon Barkley to replace Saquon Barkley, and even then, I mean, he was held back by that offense, the offensive line, the quarterback situation. Just, no, I'm going to have to pass on Singletary every chance. But can Antonio Gibson be given new life now that he's going to be a Patriot? That's right. New England went out and signed him, presumably to mix in with Ramondre Stevenson, get some third down work. Is this a good spot for him?
No, I mean, definitely not a good spot for him. Look, the Patriots offense will probably be better because they're going to get one of the top QBs, you got to think. But still, Ramondre Stevenson probably going to be the guy here. like you said, with Gibson mixed in on third down, he's probably going to have a very similar role to what we saw in Washington. I think if anything, this probably just ticks Ramondre Stevenson down a little bit because now there's actually another running back who can catch passes and take that away from him. But Antonio Gibson in New England, I'm good. I'm just going to pass on that.
Yeah, I'll definitely pass on Gibson. This actually makes me feel a little bit more confident in Ramondre. If this is it, if this is all they're doing in that running back room, I'm fine with Mondre as a starting running back. Maybe not RB1, but RB2 because, yeah, Gibson will mix in on passing downs, but Ramondre will still get plenty of receptions. And I feel like this offense can't be worse than last year. Belichick ways are gone. Mac Jones is out of there. Ramondre will still be pretty much a workhorse. I'm not scared of Gibson threatening him. And I have the feeling that the Chargers aren't done at running back, but they did sign Gus Edwards. Is this an intriguing, kind of under-the-radar move that should catch our attention?
I think so. I mean, this offense, we know they're going to want to run the ball. He's going to have chances to score touchdowns, which is what he does. I think he can have a very similar role to what he had in Baltimore. So Gus Edwards never going to be a guy that's, going to carry you to a fantasy championship, but I think he's a guy that, going to probably be forgotten in fantasy drafts that, you could get late and can give you some usable weeks, especially when you need buys or if you're just desperate with injuries and you're like, hey, maybe he could fall in the end zone this week. I think Gus Edwards, this is an intriguing spot for him, and definitely I'm going to start drafting him more than I have been, which was 0.
There you go. I mean, you think that going away from the Baltimore run-heavy offense wouldn't be a good thing for running back, except you have to remember who is the offensive coordinator now for the Chargers under Jim Harbaugh. It's former Baltimore offensive coordinator Greg Roman, who loves to run the ball. This will guaranteed be a top 10 rushing offense, at least in terms of attempts, possibly yardage too. And he brought in one of his guys that he knows. That means he plans to use him. Now, this is still going to be some sort of a committee. I am definitely expecting them to draft a running back, possibly Blake Corum, but whoever they mix with Gus Edwards, Gus is still going to get the short yardage work, the goal line work, and he's going to mix in there, and he'll kind of continue to do what he's been doing and be somebody you can plug and play if you need to. Some of those running backs are going to jump up draft boards now that they have new homes. We already talked about some of the biggest ADP risers in the offseason. What do you do with them? Do you chase or do you avoid? Check this out.